Good evening. Welcome to the February 3rd, 2015 Planning and Zoning meeting. If we could please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, then a moment of silence for our troops. If we could please have roll call from left to right.
Anthony Sutton.
Mike Dolan.
John Grant.
Jean Servine.
Edward Mead.
Carl Moore.
Tom Nickel.
Tom Panzella.
Jim Quish.
And I am Ben Gettinger. Also present are David Sulkus, City Planner, and Phyllis Leggett, Board Clerk. The first item on the agenda is executive session discussion of pending litigation, Bella Properties Milford LLC versus Milford Planning and Zoning, 1556 New Haven Avenue. And we invite the city planner and the city attorneys here. Thank you. So we're back on the record. The next item on the agenda is D2, request for CGS A-24 approval, request by D'Amato Brothers Builders Incorporated for the City of Milford to accept the donation of 0 White Oaks Road, map 75, block 922, parcel 23. Mr. Sulkus, any input?
Well, since there's no one here from the mayor's office, I guess. Yeah, this is for a piece of property. It's actually left over from when a pump station was constructed on White Oaks Terrace. So D'Amato Brothers is offering it, the rest of that property to the city.
And then this will go to the Board of Aldermen for the ultimate
That is correct.
issue?
That is correct.
Okay. Any discussion on the application? Seeing none, Mr. Mead?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just one question to Mr. Sulkus. Is this property separate from the land that they proposed to build on a couple years ago?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Nickel?
Yeah, I make a motion to approve the D'Amato Brothers for the City of Milford to accept the donation of 0 White Oaks Road.
Having a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is request for CGS 8-24 approval, renewal of a 5-year lease with one additional 5-year extension by the Milford Arts Council. And I believe Commissioner Dolan and myself need to recuse ourselves because we're on the board. So, Ms. Servine, you could take over.
So is there any further input from staff on this?
I believe this is the old firehouse on Naugatuck Avenue, which is used as an art space. It's been used as an art space for quite some time. This is a renewal of that lease so that use can continue.
Is there any board discussion? Mr. Quish.
Is there anyone from the Fine Arts Council here to speak in behalf of the request?
Apparently not, but is there any further discussion, questions? Seems fairly straightforward to me. Is there a motion?
Make a motion to approve
Motion
the renewal of the 5-year lease with one additional 5-year extension by the Milford Arts Council.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
The next item on the agenda is E4, 81 Shell Avenue, Zone R-7.5, petition of David Salerno for coastal area management site plan review approval to construct a single-family residence on map 27, block 444, parcel 3, of which Rodney R. Allen Revocable Trust is the owner.
Good evening. My name is Dave from Compass Builders. I was here last month. We were discussing the project, 81 Shell Street. Came back with the adjustments that David would like, and I could present it again, or if we just want to go to David, I know you guys have a busy night ahead of you, whichever is easier for you guys.
Thank you. Any input from staff?
We now have all of the reports and information that the board requires for a complete application.
With that being said, any discussion by the board? Would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Quish?
I'd like to make a motion to approve the application.
Second.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate the time.
The next item on the agenda is F, new business, 273 Cherry Street, Kings Highway Cemetery, Zone R-10, petition of Ray Oliver for an amendment to a special permit and site plan review to move a garage and dumpster location on map 77, block 813, parcel 24, of which the Milford Cemetery is the owner.
Good evening. My name is Ray Oliver, architect with offices at 3 Lafayette Street in Milford. I'm here representing the Milford Cemetery Association with a minor amendment to a special permit that was received in 2002. At that time, the cemetery was looking to do some site improvements. They constructed the columbarium, and there was a maintenance area in back of at the back portion of the site, which included a maintenance building and some bins for recycling organic materials. You have copies of the original approval. Basically, the site, this is a very back portion of the site. There was a maintenance building that was to be constructed, and then the bins made out of concrete blocks that would recycle organic materials, the grass, the dirt, the plants that come off of the graves, and some of the other debris. So at this point, we'd like to change the layout of this area so that we're basically swapping the building for the recycling area. And pretty much as David pointed out in the administrative memo to you guys. So now the building is on the eastern side and the recycling is on the western side. Recycling area moves a little bit further away from the wetlands area that is part of that ravine. And the building that is being constructed is somewhat bigger than the building that we proposed originally. The new building is sort of a colonial barn construction. Basically, it's a 3-bay garage. The Cemetery Association has backhoes and dump trucks and sorted excavators and lawnmowers that need to be located on this property rather than on the Cherry Street, the old cemetery location, so that it eliminates the drivers from having to move the equipment back and forth between the two cemeteries. So that's pretty much, it's pretty simple. We're swapping one side for the other, and the building's getting a little bit bigger. If there are any questions, I'd be glad to answer.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
No, it's as described.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Nichol.
Yes, sir, Mr. Oliver. I couldn't find a building over there.
There is no building there now.
All right.
The original building was never constructed.
Any other questions from the board? Mr. Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. On the original plans, how far is the building from the property line?
The original plan? That's approximately 40 feet away from the property line.
Thank you, but now with the compost, you're only 10 feet off the property line with a buffer zone. Was there any issue of like smell or anything from?
No, it's really just dirt and organics, the grass that gets removed from the grave sites, plastic flowers and stuff like that.
Okay, thank you.
It's beyond the setback. The setback in this zone is 10 feet, so.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Nichol.
Yeah, I make a motion to approve 273 Cherry Street, petition of Ray Oliver for an amendment to a special permit to move a garage and dumpster location, map 77, block 813, which Milford Cemetery is the owner.
Having a motion, anyone second?
Second that.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is public hearing closed by March 10, 2015, expires on May 4th, 2015, 530, 532 Boston Post Road, Zone CD-1, petition of John Wicko for special permit and site plan review approval to convert the second floor office space to 6 residential units on map 65, block 921, parcel 0010C, of which Errol Van Heist is the owner.
Thank you. I'm John Wicko, offices at 50 Broad Street. I'm here for Errol Van Heist Properties to explain the application of his existing mixed-use building on the Boston Post Road. It's kind of down from the 7-Eleven, if you need a little landmark. We're kind of where High Street in that area. Building's kind of, it's been in use for a while. He put a second-story business over, or offices, I should say, over a portion of the rear recently, and now he's here to convert the offices into residential apartments, and that's why we're here for the special use, because it's a permitted mixed-use building containing the dwelling units. We're under the percentage. We're at 49% where we can't be more than 67. The units themselves meet the minimum requirements of 425 for efficiencies. We're at 497, and the one bedrooms need to be a minimum of 575. We're at 632. This site has one other character that, let me see if I can get this on. It has the survey, which was performed by Scott Mundy, shows the building here at the center and other parcels within that, which I'll talk about later. But the site itself has an accessory use, which has been in existence for quite some time, a rental car and panel van budget business. And as part of that, we are carrying that accessory use into this application with some vans and cars that are on the designated parking areas on this site. We conform with the open space, which is the front yard setbacks. Actually, the front, excuse me, I'm trying to decipher. The front yard is 20 foot, and the sides are either 4 or 0 feet. The existing building is encroaching that non-conforming aspect of it. We're not changing any of the footprint or any of the front area. Also, a part of the site is a large area towards the rear, which is a lawned area, which has open space as part of this section, which conforms to the residential dwelling units for the size required, which is 2,000 square feet. We're providing 2,552 square feet. Around that, we have ballards that are kind of at the perimeter of the open space. Through discussion, we also have a picket fence. There's a detail further in the drawings, but we felt that because it's kind of in the middle of the parking area, we feel better about having some protection from any vehicular mishaps that might happen. I'll just kind of go through quickly the other parts of the regulation, the zone chart, which is on SP1. We're conforming with all the building, zone chart there, all the building length, design, heights, FARs, access to the post road as they are, so that's still in conformance. The parking, we are again in conformance. Our new uses require 28 and on the site itself, and we're providing 32. There's 12 residential and 16 retail spaces, and all the parking standards are met. The interesting part of this sheet, we have a parking calculation up here, which we kind of wanted to bring back to life and revisit. Part of the approval, there's a diagram on the top sheet of SP1. There's parcels A, B, C, front and rear. Through discussions with the city planner, we decided to kind of make that very clear what parking is where and what parcel uses what spaces. So there's, if you like, I can go through it, but there's a description of each parcel and the uses that are current. That was another thing. We wanted to make sure everything was up to date with what the uses are in those buildings. And it describes that all the parcels are still in conformance. There is on parcel A, which is a large building over here, it was approved with 82 spaces provided where 99 are required. That was approved with a waiver, which is still, we're not dealing with this in our application, but we just wanted to kind of bring everything full circle so we can kind of close off any questions that might come up with that parking. I could go through that in detail, but if I can answer questions if you have any. I'll just kind of try to zip through this for you. Landscaping, we have a pretty vastly improved site condition here, where it was pretty much a sea of asphalt. We're providing the open space, which is lawn area, islands, and planters, where previously the pervious percentage, which the engineer wanted to make sure we had, is 95.6%, where now we're down to 75 and change percent of pervious. So we're really improving and beautifying this particular site. The landscaping itself, we've got the plant list with different street trees and a variation of those, that vegetation. The tree commission looked at this and approved our designs. SP3, we go into showing details of some of the site requirements that we're proposing. This up at the top of SP3 shows a kind of maybe a little unusual, unorthodox picket fence with the ballards as actually the fence posts at every 5 feet. We also have our refuse enclosure, which is of a like material to the building, which is, in this case, concrete block. We're going to parge it and kind of a stucco finish to it. It actually is pretty durable that way, with solid vinyl doors. Getting into the building, A1, the existing first floor is drawn here, showing there's an Asian cafe that's currently and will be continuing to use the space. And then there's an elevator to gain access for handicapped, meeting the ADA compliance, or meeting their regulations. And also one of the stairs. So that's basically the residential lobby. It goes up to the second floor, where there's a hallway leading to the second egress stair and the 6 units, which there's a schedule on that sheet also, which describes the type and the sizes. And elevations, in essence, they're existing, so we represented those on these 2 drawings. And that is a brief description of the application. It's here, we're here for the special permit for the safeguards, the open space, and those things like the open space and some of the other safeguards that we're here to present to you guys.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
I have nothing to add.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Nichol.
Yes, sir. Can you describe what's on the first level of this proposed 6 residential units?
Sure. That would be, I believe it's on A1. Yes, A1, in terms of the use, as I said, it's an Asian market. It's a grocery store, basically. The back of it has the support facilities, walk-in cooler, stock rooms, storage room, little office, toilet, that kind of thing.
Do they do any cooking in this grocery store that would reflect on maybe adding sprinkler systems or anything like that?
They don't do any cooking in the store, but the building is sprinklered, regardless of that function.
So the first and second floors are both sprinkler protected?
That's correct. You're welcome.
Any further questions? Mr. Mead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Through you. Will the parking spaces for this building be marked or designated for the residents?
Not directly, but kind of the way they're laid out. They tend to have a nice use group where the back spaces will be kind of instructed for residential, and the ones that are next to the open space. Those are the 2 areas but there are no, at this point there will be no signs. It is a mixed use, so we can share and share alike on the weekends, let's say, and that type of thing.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we'll open this up for public comment, but before I read the procedures, is anyone here for or against this application? I will read the... What? Okay. You're the applicant?
Yes.
Okay.
Earl Van Heist, 42 Roller Terrace. This building is 6 units. It'll be for 6 single people. It's a security building. You can't get into this building unless you have a key, have electronic locks to it. The people that I cater to are doctors, lawyers, very high-end. Most of them travel to New York. This is an ideal setup for them because they want a secure place to live in. They don't want to be hassled by anybody. And they put in tremendous hours, as you know. From 80 to 100 hours a week they work. So they're very nice people. I rented them in another building, and there's a definitely need for this type of residence. And on top of this, I would say 75% of them will be females. So that's the other thing that draws them to this type of building. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else for or against this application? Seeing none, before we close the record, any questions from the board? Mr. Nickel.
Yeah, I have one question. If this is such a secure building, how does a first responder get in?
With the
Yeah,
locking system.
there's a lock box. It's secured to the building. It's bolted in. The fire department and the police department have a key to it, and a key opens up the building. And they're aware of this.
That procedure is pretty common for mechanical rooms and other rooms that are locked, sprinkler rooms, where the first responders have the codes and the keys, which is a normal procedure.
If someone breaks the lockbox, does the alarm go off?
You can't break the lockbox. It's very expensive. It's put up about 15 feet high. The fire department has a special key to this. They have to put a ladder against the building. They have to go up and unlock it. It's impossible for somebody to break into that box. I mean, they probably could. If they worked at it, they brought their own ladder and a sledgehammer or built a staging. But by the time they do all this stuff, the police department will be there. In fact, the police department is only 1 block away. That's another reason why I wanted this. It's a very secure location.
Any further questions? Seeing none, we will close the record. Does anyone see any reason why we cannot vote tonight? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Quish?
I'd make a motion to approve as presented.
I'll second.
Having a motion and a second, any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, all in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Have a good night. Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is continued public hearing closed by 2/24/15, expires on 4/30/15, 460 Bick Drive, Zone OD, petition of Garden Homes Management Corporation for special permit and site plan review approval to construct a 257-unit residential development under CGS Section 8-30G on map 41, block 301, parcel 29, of which Garden Homes Residential LP is the owner.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Once again, for the record, Thomas Lynch. I'm an attorney here in Milford with offices at 63 Cherry Street. And do you want me to stop for a second?
No, you could continue.
Okay. I saw Jean with her hand up, so. When Jean puts her hand up, I usually stop. No, again, for the record, Thomas Lynch. I'm here, this is a continuation of our public hearing that was left open from the 20th. I'm here tonight representing Garden Homes Management Corporation and its principal, Richard Friedman, who's here with me tonight, along with the other members of the development team who were here at the last hearing. And there were a number of issues that were raised, and specifically four, I think, that were of particular concern to both members of the public and to the board. And what we've done is address those primarily by way of a handout that I believe all of you have. We had emailed it previously to Phyllis, who I'm told forwarded the email to you, but then we also brought with us tonight hard copies for you to make reference to. Just briefly, this is an application, again, brought under Section 830G of our Connecticut statutes, the Affordable Housing Act, for development of a 257-unit residential multifamily development on the site located at 460 Bick Drive. And we'd like to say that there were basically four issues that were raised at the last public hearing. There was an issue raised relative to the proximity to the construction and the improvements on site of the Iroquois gas pipeline that runs basically throughout the city of Milford by way of easement, traversing from the north end of town down to Long Island Sound. And that's one of the first things that we'll talk about through this handout. There was also an issue that was raised by Attorney Whitney on behalf of her client, Armin Cantafio, who's the owner of the property across the street, Northeast Electronics, relative to the issue of water pressure. We've addressed that by way of correspondence to the Regional Water Authority and their response to our engineer, Steve Trinkus's basically amending of the plans to provide for water pressure pumps to be installed in the building. So I'll go over those in a second, those portions of the handout. There was also a issue raised, I believe, by Gene relative to sidewalks. The plans, when they were originally presented to you 2 weeks ago, did not provide for sidewalks on either Bick Drive or Naugatuck Avenue, and I'm going to get into that in just a second. We've amended the plans. We've conceded that issue. The plans do show the layout of sidewalk on both Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue within the city's right-of-way. I went over this with your city engineer, Gary Wassmer. I also believe that the Public Works Director had input in this, and basically, the Public Works Department felt that sidewalks were a necessity, so we have amended the plans and presenting them to you tonight with the installation of sidewalks along both Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue. And lastly, there was some discussion about traffic. We were here with our traffic expert, Bruce Hilson, who is also back with us tonight. I'm going to turn things over to him once I make my comments for him to go through the traffic count that he did. I believe that Jim Quish had requested a traffic count to be made at the intersection of Route 1 and Schoolhouse Road. That count was performed, and there's data to address that. So just going to this handout, first on the issue of the gas pipeline, there's a letter from Steve Trinkus that basically shows that that issue has been addressed. We do not feel that this is an issue that's really of a zoning concern. Any construction will be done under the auspices of the Iroquois Gas Pipeline Company, and Steve did speak to Ms. Beta Orson of the pipeline company, and his letter of January 28th addresses the issues that she raised. We also have aerial layout of the proximity of the improvements on the property to the pipeline. There's going to be no construction of the building within the pipeline easement, only the parking area, and we have shown that on the detailed sketch that we've provided to you here. As I mentioned, we have amended the plans to provide for sidewalks. So page 6 of our handout, basically, in terms of the booster pumps, page 6 of the handout shows the proposed booster pumps that are the result of discussions with the Regional Water Authority. They will be located, I believe, in the bicycle storage room on the first floor of the building. And page 7 shows the correspondence between Doug Haro, who is the construction manager of Garden Homes Management, his discussions with Dave Johnson of the South Central Regional Water Authority, basically going through the plans, installing the booster pumps. There's verification that there's adequate water supply in that area. I believe there's either a 20-inch or a 16-inch water main either on Bick Drive or Naugatuck. But the verification through this correspondence on page 7 of the handout does show that we addressed that with the water company. The booster pumps will, if there is any issue with water pressure, address that. And as I said, page 6 shows the sketch of the booster pumps, and page 8 actually is a detailed photograph of the type of system that would be installed in the building. Page 9 of the handout addresses the issue of the sidewalks. Steve has drawn onto the site plan the proposed sidewalk design, again, in the city right-of-way, traversing the entire diameter of the property as it relates to Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue. So those were 3 of the main issues that were brought up at the last hearing. They were issues of concern. If you go to the last page of the handout, we've shown proposed conditions of approval with the installation of the sidewalks, the installation of the pumping system, and also, I believe David had raised the issue of some concerns from the Tree Commission. We are willing to modify the landscaping plan to provide a wider variety of trees per the recommendations of the Tree Commission. That leaves the issue of traffic. I'm going to turn things over to Bruce to have him go through the detailed data that he has supplied here, and then if there's any further questions, we can address them upon completion of his presentation to you. Thanks.
Good evening. My name's Bruce Hilson. I'm a registered professional engineer. At the last meeting, we were asked to do traffic counts during the morning and afternoon peak periods at the intersection of Bridgeport Avenue, which is Route 1, and Schoolhouse Road. There's also a commercial driveway opposite Schoolhouse Road that was included in this traffic count. The counts were made between 7 o'clock in the morning and 9 o'clock in the morning, and again 4 o'clock in the afternoon to 6 o'clock in the afternoon on Thursday, the 22nd of January. That was before the onslaught of snow and the conditions of the roadway and the area were in very good condition. What we found is during the morning peak hour, the intersection operates at level of service B, as in boy. During the afternoon peak hour, it operates at level of service D, as in David. With the no-build conditions, when traffic is increased by 1.5% a year, the intersection continues to operate at the same levels of service, and with the addition of the traffic associated with the proposed apartments, it continues to operate at the same levels of service. So we conclude that the apartments proposed for the southwest corner of Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue will have no impact on the overall operating levels of service at the signalized intersection of Bridgeport Avenue.
Excuse me, there's no comments from anyone in back. You'll have your chance to talk.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The apartments proposed for the southwest corner of Bick Drive and Naugatuck Avenue will have no impact to the overall operating levels of service at the signalized intersection of Bridgeport Avenue, which is Route 1, and Schoolhouse Road. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, as I mentioned at the outset, I believe that addresses the issues that the board members had raised at the last public hearing, and that concludes our presentation to the board.
Thank you. Any comments from staff?
Not at this time.
Any questions from the board? Mr. Quish.
A question on the traffic at the intersection of Route 1. You did a count and identified what the existing condition is. My question is, what do you posit the effect in number of cars in each of the two peak periods would be added to that existing condition?
As I indicated at the earlier meeting, during the morning peak hour, we would expect about 21 vehicles or trips associated with the apartment to travel through this intersection. During the afternoon peak hour, we would expect 27 cars associated with the apartment. And this is shown on page 19 of the information that was handed out to you this evening.
So I understand you would say that those numbers would be for the entire 2-hour period.
That is for 1 hour during that peak period.
So the peak period of 2 hours would double those numbers?
Not necessarily. The peak hour is the highest hour, and then the second hour would be a little less than that.
And how did you come up with that estimate?
The ITE trip generation manual was used to determine the total number of trips associated with the apartment development. We then distributed those trips to the roadway system, beginning at the site driveway, coming through the intersection with Naugatuck Avenue, where some of the traffic would turn off, continuing to West Avenue, where additional traffic may or may not turn, continuing through the southbound ramps with I-95, where some traffic will again enter the highway, through the northbound ramps of an I-95, where additional traffic will enter the highway, and then continuing on to Route 1, where the remainder of the traffic would turn and continue on their paths.
So if the numbers are, if you have 257 units and you have 1.5 cars per unit, you're at 300 plus 360 something cars, and you think that less than 10% will reach the post road?
Well, the premise that you're using, that there are 360 trips during the peak hour, is incorrect. If you bear with me while I get my copy of the original report. Based upon the ITE trip generation manual, an apartment complex, and in this case, we at the time we did the study, it was 284 units. It's actually 257, I believe, so it's slightly smaller than originally anticipated. But at that time, the trip generation for the 284 units during the morning peak hour was 143 trips, and in the afternoon peak hour, 174 trips.
And so that is based on some statistical database that you use?
It's based upon the ITE trip generation manual, which is the design reference used to determine the number of trips associated with virtually any type of development that a developer would want to build. Includes offices, shopping centers, military facilities.
If they have their original book, it's right here on 76.
So it's all based upon information that's been gathered nationwide as well as within the state to determine the number of trips associated with different types of developments and land uses.
So is this data that you're using specifically for residential studio and one-bedroom apartments?
It's for apartment developments, which are typically 1 and 2 bedroom. So the generation rate is actually greater than what we'll actually see here. Or at least I would expect that to be.
I don't know. Common sense would tell me that if it's a one-bedroom apartment and there's 2 people living in it, they're probably both leaving, as opposed to, less than 100% of the people leaving or coming back at the normal rush hour times. I just think the numbers are low, and I'm not sure that I can really defend against, nationally recognized database. But it seems to me that there is the likelihood that a lot more than 20 cars per hour at those rush hour periods are going to hit the post road. It just seems untenable.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch the end of that.
It just seems that the argument is untenable, that would be that number of cars would not be much greater in my common sense estimation.
Well, again, the total number of trips leaving or associated with a development during the morning peak hour, 1 hour, is 143, most of which are leaving the site during that hour. And in the afternoon, it's 174 trips. About 2/3 of them returning home. By the time you get down to Route 1, which I think is where you're saying it's, the numbers seem low, they are considerably lower because there's the opportunity at several locations for traffic to turn in one direction or another, particularly at the I-95 interchange going northbound and southbound. Getting back to whether or not you think these numbers are reasonable, I can only say 2 things on that. One, the ITE trip generation reference is a reference that is recognized by the traffic engineering profession and by every state agency in the country as well as the federal government. It is recognized specifically by the Connecticut DOT, and they, in fact, use this same reference to confirm the trip generation numbers, which we traffic engineers provide to them when we submit applications to them. The second point I want to make is that this issue has been raised a number of times throughout the course of my career, where commission members have asked and public have asked whether or not their community might be different than other communities. And whether it's apartment developments, single-family developments, condominium developments, whatever the type of development, we've gone back and actually done traffic counts at driveways of the same type of land use, apartment, condo, single family, whatever, and come up with numbers that were extremely close to these trip generation numbers. So close that the total number of trips associated with the number of units in that facility was within 1 or 2 of the total number of trips that would have been projected using the ITE numbers. So these numbers are an accurate reflection of what you would expect from this type of development.
So, and I do understand that there is statistical data and has been verified, and it has merit because it does, and it's used and respected. I think that my main question is that how would you reasonably come up with a number of cars that will reach the post road as opposed to getting on the highway? I mean, I think that's kind of like a guess, and I don't know that that's really not going to have an impact on people's lives. There are times that I've sat at that light 3 times without 257 units within a quarter mile. So there is a lot of traffic there already, which is not obviously your issue or the development's issue, but it is a situation that will be exacerbated by the addition of, and you're saying 20 an hour, you know, maybe that's 50 an hour, and that becomes cars that are now over the bridge, you know, and it becomes a real issue.
Just as a comparison, during the morning peak hour, there are 1,600 cars traveling through that intersection, Route 1 and Schoolhouse Road. We're adding...
That's always, my concern really is heading south on Schoolhouse Road, getting to the post road.
Well, and again, our numbers reflect traffic coming and going, so it's not just Schoolhouse Road.
But the bottleneck is where I think the impact of the community is going to happen, and the bottleneck will be heading southbound on Schoolhouse Road.
On Schoolhouse Road, during the morning peak, there's about 300 cars traveling toward the intersection. And we would be adding to that $10 cars.
You had just said earlier that it was 20 cars per hour.
There are cars also returning, I'm sorry, 17 cars. I was looking at the wrong numbers. We'd be adding to that 17 cars.
And again, based on what data do you have to defend that number?
Well, that's based upon the cars that we would anticipate turning at each of the opportunities along the way to travel either Naugatuck Avenue, which we don't anticipate a lot, but we anticipate some. West Avenue, again, not much. The highway, we would anticipate a fairly substantial turning going southbound or northbound on the highway, and the remaining trips going to Route 1. These numbers, again, were submitted, as I indicated last meeting. Everything was submitted to the Connecticut DOT through the Office of the State Traffic Administration for their review as a major traffic generator. And they have agreed with our analysis and with our assignment of traffic for this development. So it's been reviewed by an independent agency and accepted.
I don't think they acknowledge that your breakdown of the traffic is accurate. You're putting 80% of the traffic onto 95, and that is a guess. That's all I'm saying. It's a guess. There's no defensible argument for that besides you think that that's what it's going to be. I mean, the DOT is not blessing your numbers in terms of the breakdown of where these people are going to travel.
Well, there's nothing that says that it's not the right numbers. It's when you do a trip distribution, it's your best judgment on traffic patterns that presently exist and what you would anticipate your development's traffic to do.
Thank you for your time.
Any further questions from the board?
If I could, Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to follow up with Mr. Quish's comments with another, maybe direct our attention in a little different realm. Because what I want you to do is think about what could be built on that property now by right, all right? Property is located in the office, the OD zone. Property is 7.36 acres. Based upon our zoning regulations, you can build a 96,000 square foot office building there, or a motel, or a hotel, or an extended stay hotel. Our parking regulations, again, this is an 830G application. We're not bound by the zoning regulations, but I'm talking about what if we were going to proceed bound by the zoning regulations. With a 96,000 square foot, I'm just sitting here jogging down numbers. With a 96,000 square foot building on that site, Jim, our zoning regulations call for 4 parking spaces per 1,000 square feet. That would come to 385 parking spaces, 385 cars. We're before you with an application that has a total, even with the overflow parking, of 360. So I just want to leave you with the mindset and the thought that what we're proposing is actually less of a traffic imposition than what we could build by right in that zone. All right, now that's an important thought that I want to leave you with because it really goes to the issue that I think you're trying to raise. And I also want to buttress my comments with comments that I made in our initial public hearing about the infrastructure that was built back in the 60s to accommodate that traffic. And as Bruce said, you have Interstate 95, you have Route 1 within close proximity, but you have Bick Drive, taking that traffic from the site to those other areas where the traffic dissipates. So his comments really go to the dissipation of the traffic and what impact it's going to have at the traffic light at the corner of Route 1 and Bick Drive. And I know that was your concern the other night, but I want to direct your attention and focus you on the big picture, and the big picture is this development is less of a traffic infringement than what we could build by right.
Thank you. Mr. Nickel.
No, I just had a thought that I think all this is hypothetical, and whether or not anybody ever left that apartment complex, I think the figures would come out the same, that you'd have more traffic even though no one ever left the parking lot.
Thank you. Any further questions? Mr. Nickel.
Yeah, I have some questions on this triplex booster pump system, if anybody can address that.
Hi, I'm Doug Hero, Director of Construction for Garden Homes Management.
The system you propose here, is that fully operational 24/7?
It would be, yes.
It would be or it will be?
It will be. Both the fire protection and for the domestic are 24/7.
And there's a maintenance contract that will go along with that, that if anything breaks down, it'll be fixed?
That's correct. Also, each system would have additional audible alarms and hooked to our alarm company's monitoring system to monitor the pump operation.
Yeah, I read this this article here, and it indicates that this 16-inch line is going to give you 38 pounds of pressure. When was that pressure reading taken?
I believe it was based on the data I received from the water company. It is an old piece of data. How old, I'm not 100% sure of. What we would do typically is then do an additional flow test, but that data is accurate at this point.
It drastically changed in over the years from what I'm reading here, 24 pounds per square inch to 38. Did they do an upgrade, or what did they do?
I'm not familiar with any upgrade, but I would assume that would be the case because of the industrial park.
Do you represent the water company?
I do not. I represent Garden Homes Management.
Thank you.
Any additional questions from the board? Seeing none, we'll open this up for public comment. If I could please just go over the procedure. If you could approach the podium, clearly state your name and address, spelling your name, address all comments to the commission. If your comments have been previously presented, please refrain from repeating. Simply state that you're in agreement with what was said before. State your comments in a clear and succinct manner, and try to keep your comments under 3 minutes. If anyone is for this application, please come forward. Seeing no one, if anyone is opposed to this application, you could please form a line.
Good evening. I'm Diane Whitney from the firm of Pullman and Comley. Whitney is W-H-I-T-N-E-Y, and the address is 90 State House Square in Hartford. I represent Northeast Electronics Corporation, which is directly across the street from the site in question. Attorney Lynch has correctly run through the list of 4 safety concerns that we have about this property, and has certainly seemed to address some of them. For the sidewalk issue, which we think is very important, particularly because apparently bus service is on Naugatuck, and you would not want residents to walk up Bick and across Naugatuck without sidewalks. So we applaud that addition and hope that you will review the plans and make sure that, in fact, that the sidewalks are designed to your city requirements. As to the gas line, that still remains a concern, and we would suggest that you might ask that a representative from the gas line company come and speak to you about that, because it's vitally important, and if there's a problem with the gas line, it will be catastrophic. On water pressure, you've heard me say before that Northeast Electronics has serious water pressure problems, and you have you were given tonight a packet of documents that's really just the tip of the iceberg as Northeast Electronics has tried to solve its water pressure problems through the many years. You also have in the back of that packet some standards for recommended water pressure. The water pressure as measured today that's coming into Northeast Electronics is around 22 PSI, 22, 24 PSI, which is not enough, as I've told you before, to flush the toilets without pumps. Northeast Electronics has 3 pumps, 2 to provide water to the facility on a normal day-to-day basis, and 1 reserved for only fire protection services. Again, we urge you to be very careful about the conditions for pumping the water, and realize that Northeast Electronics only has 90 people there, only roughly 8 to 10 hours a day, not something in excess of 257 people living there, at least some of them 24 hours a day. It's a much, much larger demand, and the water pressure issue is exceedingly serious there. Probably the largest remaining concern is with traffic and access to the site. As you know, there's 1 driveway into and out of this site. I understand from reviewing the plans, which didn't exactly locate Northeast Electronics so that we could figure this out exactly, but it appears that the driveway from this plan is directly across the street from Northeast Electronics' driveway. Because it would be a safety issue, the residents here cannot turn left going out of this driveway. So you're being told by the applicant that there's an unsafe condition here, that it is unsafe to turn left, and they are providing that you can only turn right. Question, is that really reasonable to say to 257 to possibly as many as 500 people, don't make a left turn out of that driveway? Is that reasonable? Is that safe? Will it be enforced, and how? And what about emergency access? With only one driveway in and out of this property, is that adequate for safe fire protection to a very large, very dense residential development? Generally, in my experience, a fire marshal would not approve a site with that many people with only one way to get in and out. I would also suggest for your consideration the fact that your knowledge of conditions in this area is competent evidence of those conditions. And you've expressed some concern about traffic conditions in this area. Also, in response to Attorney Lynch's presentation that they could build various other things by right here that might be larger generators of traffic, the answer is, of course, no, they can't if it's not safe. And if the driveway is not safe, you're not going to approve an office use or some other use that has even more cars than is there now. So there is still a considerable safety issue at this site. The proposal puts hundreds of people on a site that does not seem to be well suited for high-density residential use. We ask that you give this serious consideration, that you take into consideration both the safety of the people who would be living here and the safety of the people in the surrounding area. It is a rather highly developed area. There's a lot of heavy industrial traffic on Bick Drive, and you're adding to that a lot of residential traffic into a situation that already has some serious considerations from a safety standpoint. So we ask that you consider that very carefully and that you not approve an application that does not provide for the safety of the residents there. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Dottie Bateman. I am the president of the Caswell Cove Association at the other end of Big Drive. Talk about safety. Every time we pull out of our driveway, we have trucks coming from the opposite direction. There is a yield sign, but for the most part, they don't use it. And it's a serious safety issue because we have high pillars coming out of our place, and we're on the same level. I can't even imagine pulling out of that particular site and not being able to see these trucks coming down the hill, even though you're only allowed to make a right-hand turn. This has been one of the most trafficked areas. They talk about traffic, I forgot all the details about how you count traffic. They didn't talk about the double tractor trailers that go up to the transfer station or up to the water treatment center. We have Beard Gravel up there. We have the Grillo Brothers. We have tractor trailer trucks coming up and down Bick Drive on a daily basis. We have 204 units at Caswell Cove. So far, everyone's been happy. It's worked out very well. I can't even imagine an additional 257 units. If it were 50 cars, maybe, but 50 apartments, but even that, it's too dangerous. It is not a safe situation at all. Thank you for your time. Please go against.
Good evening. Good evening. I'm Emily Monis. I'm over at Caswell Cove. I'm a recent transport into Milford, and I think the town is great. But I am a little upset hearing about some of the issues that will be transpiring down on Bick Drive. One of the things that really bothers me is the ingress and egress over at the proposed complex. The traffic on Naugatuck Avenue and Bick Drive gets to be a little congested right now with the traffic light. But with another 250 or 300 cars going in and out, I think we have a severe safety issue. And the trucks we were talking about, there's lots of trucks going in and out Bick Drive. So that was my main concern. And I did want to mention the ITE report that we just reviewed. I respect those reports, but we live there, and we live there with the congestion of all the cars, and having another 250 in the area can cause concern and safety issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Could you just spell your name for the record?
Sure. It's M-O-N-E-S, Monis. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Kochi, and I'm with Mountain Development Corp. My office address is at 1 Waterview Drive in Shelton. My company is the owner of 500 Bick Drive in Milford, Connecticut, a 625,000 square foot warehouse industrial complex, which is immediately adjacent to the subject development site. The applicant proposes to build 257 residential units on approximately 7 acres. My understanding is that the proposed construction is of lightweight wood, and it's truss construction. There's a major Iroquois high-pressure natural gas transmission line which runs along the boundary of the 7-acre site. My biggest concern is that on January 21st, the 400-unit Avalon Bay apartment complex in Edgewater, New Jersey, burned for over 24 hours and was destroyed. It was a fully sprinklered apartment complex. Over 500 firefighters and over 50 emergency response vehicles from 35 surrounding towns in New Jersey failed to stop this fire. My question is, how would the Milford Fire Department battle a fire of this magnitude? You could not get 50 fire trucks onto this site with one driveway. In August of 2000, on the same site in New Jersey, a project called Avalon River Muse was destroyed by fire. This fire also destroyed 9 homes, 12 cars, and damaged other commercial buildings in the area. The New York Times reported that the fire responders had trouble extinguishing the blaze in 2000 because a ruptured gas line at the center of the complex fed the fire. One major concern is the water pressure on Bick Drive. At 500 Bick Drive, we have a 250,000-gallon supplemental water tank to fight fires in the event that public water pressure is inadequate. The applicant proposes a booster pump for the site. My question is, how does the applicant propose to get water to the booster pump? How would the Milford Fire Department fight a fire on this site if water pressure is inadequate, as has happened in the past? The next question I have is, how would a major fire impact the high-pressure natural gas transmission line? The applicant proposes one driveway, one access in, and one access out. My understanding is that Planning and Zoning in the town of Fairfield rejected an 8-30G development proposed by Garden Homes, the same applicant, based on the fact that fire trucks had inadequate means of access and egress to the site and an inadequate turning radius. The same significant issues are present here. The applicant is proposing truss construction. The sprinkler heads are typically below the trusses. Air pockets above the trusses permit these fires to spread rapidly. These apartment complexes can become death traps. Our tenants at 500 Bick Drive are some of the major employers in this region, including Sikorsky, Subway, Milford Fabricating, Bick, and 3PL Worldwide. We cannot tolerate any interruption of their operations. Our other concern is the traffic impacts of this proposed development. The single driveway would empty onto Bick Drive, which is already clogged with truck and passenger car traffic. I would just like to make one other point. MDC Milford Associates owns the 34-acre site next to this subject property and a 624,000 square foot building on the immediately adjacent property. We received not one notice of this proposed application until a sign was posted on the 460 property concerning the January 20th hearing. We would like to bring in our own life safety consultant and our own traffic consultant to review and opine on this development with appropriate recommendations to the Planning and Zoning Board. As a significant property owner in Milford, we would encourage you to deny this application based on the serious life safety issues which are evident here. Thank you.
Thank you. Could you also spell your name?
Yeah. It's C-O-C-I.
Thank you.
Sure.
Andrew Vargo, V-A-R-G-O, 293 West Rutland Road. I live on the corner of West Rutland and Plains Road, and with all due respect to the traffic expert, is either intentionally misleading you or he's inept in his study. I'm going to tell you where all that traffic's going to go. They're going to come down the hill, they're going to take a left on Naugatuck Avenue, and they're going to take a left onto West Rutland Road. I know this because I see it every day. I scream at people every day. Traffic isn't local that blows through the stop sign. It's a cut through, it's a major highway. And most of the traffic is not going to go to 95. They're either going to come up our way or they're going to go down Naugatuck Avenue. If there's shortcuts to the Parkway, nobody wants to go up to the Post Road and drive through the traffic lights. This is the reality. This isn't a bunch of numbers that somebody comes up with in a manual. I live it every day. This is a major safety issue for the children in our neighborhood, and I do not want to be here in front of this board because one of our children got hit by a car. And then the politicians come out of the woodwork. Oh, we have to do something. Your elected officials, do the right thing and deny this. Don't have us come back because of an incident like this, because you're all responsible if this goes through. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is John McConey. I live at 1251 Naugatuck Avenue. You want me to spell my last name? I could do it now. I don't know. Can't guarantee I'll do it later. M-A-C-C-O-N-E. Some concerns. I'm not an expert. I'm certainly not an attorney or an engineer. I'm just a guy. Mention of some booster pumps to increase pressure of water to serve the customer here, to serve the tenant of the proposed builder. Where is that booster pump going to get the water from? Where's the booster pump going to take the pressure from? I live in a 4-bedroom home, 2,300 square feet, 5 people in my family, and my children will remind me a dog. We have problems in a house that's 15 years old with water pressure, and it wasn't built below code. It was built with a quality builder from local people. You all know who he is. I don't have to mention who he is, and he does a good job. And I have water pressure problems. Where is the water going to come from? And on the second note, when you need water to go in, you have water coming out. Is a sewer pipe, no one mentioned, is a sewer pipe adequate to take the sewage from 257, and I'm going to be accused of saying the wrong word here, families. Because if it's a 1-bedroom apartment, it's 2 people. And guess what happens when you have 2 people living together? I found out 22 years ago. You have children. So those are important things to take into consideration. Wastewater is, traffic is a huge problem. I'm against that. But my concerns are with water. It's a health hazard. Where are we going to get the water from? Somebody going to dig up the street? Thank you.
Hi, my name is Cheryl Dato, and I live on 21 Wiley Avenue, which is right off of Naugatuck Avenue, basically right around the corner from the proposed site. I've lived there almost 20 years, and we've had water pressure issues basically the whole time. And we were told by the Water Authority, I think our PSI might be 23. I think the lowest by law might be like 22 or something. But I don't see, I'm wondering what's going to happen to my water pressure that's already low with all this extra. I'd like to know, find out from the Water Authority what's going to happen to my water pressure in our area, in our neighborhood, right around the corner. Also, as far as traffic, I know they had mentioned the topography of right where the site is. It's up kind of a quick incline when you're at that intersection of Bick and Naugatuck. It goes up really steep, quick, and there's massive industrial trucks coming up and down, zipping back and forth all day long. And I foresee it. It's a danger right now with them zipping along. And I don't, I see it as a safety issue, definitely pulling out as being an issue. And also, let me see, for 4 stories, I think that's really, for being up so high and have it 4 stories and 257 units is just too much. It's just too much of a project. I'm all for affordable housing, but not in such a large scale like that. I think it's a huge, huge project, and I just think it's too big for the area. And that's it. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Chet Shoyan. I'm the Vice President and Treasurer of Audubon Manor Condominium Association, located right on the corner of Grinnell, which is where Kingdom Life Church is, and Naugatuck Avenue. We have 58 units in 14 lovely buildings, plus the one is called the Manor House, which is it used to be the home of George Bird Grinnell, okay, who was he lived there, and I understand that he and John Muir and Teddy Roosevelt was supposedly have slept there. They were instrumental in Yellowstone National Park, Yosemite, and so we are right on Naugatuck Avenue. The traffic there continues all day long between what a previous lady said, all the trucks going up and down Naugatuck Avenue, all the cars going up Naugatuck Avenue. Everybody's concerned about Bick Avenue, but there is a lot of traffic on Naugatuck Avenue going from Bick over to Plains Road, down to the Thruway, which is exit 36, and then continuing down to Post Road, which now has Cumberland Farms. Okay. The safety issue here is a main concern for us because we're looking at not only we have all ages living here at our beautiful association, and as a matter of fact, these buildings are 4-unit buildings. They're one level basically. Some of them are townhouses. It looks like a beautiful village setting, along with that beautiful manor house. In there, we have nurses, doctors, professionals. We even have some members of the city who live there. And we also have people who are elderly, disabled. So we have a variety of people. We have the emergency responders coming in there quite a few times during the time that I've lived there since 2004. This is a concern for us. Not only that, but you think about if there's a fire there and the water pressure for the 2 fire hydrants that we have on our property go down, you're talking about a major issue here, a major catastrophe that could possibly happen. I want the board to consider this, and being on a board similar to yours at our association, I can appreciate the fact you have a lot to consider. So thank you very much for hearing my talk about this today. And also I want to remind you that this is 257 units, 1 bedroom with maybe 2 people living there who commute back and forth to their job, plus the studio apartments of 1 person or maybe 2 or more, okay, that go back and forth to whatever work they're doing. So there's a lot of traffic that could be added to Naugatuck, the safety issues, and everything else. Thank you very much for considering what I said today.
Thank you. And could you please spell your name?
Yes, Shoyan, S-C-H-O-Y-E-N. First name is Chet, C-H-E-T. Thank you.
Good evening. Richard Platt, 132 Platt Lane. in all the discussion that I've heard this evening and all the presentation, there has been no mention that I heard of the existing structure on this property. Now, this may be outside your purview as far as this particular case is concerned, but I bring it to your attention anyway for your information. There's an 1850 Greek Revival house on this property known as Caswell Spring Farm. Now, what's going to become of it? Is it just going to be swept away, destroyed, or whatever? I've already made I'm not going to show it to you now, it'll take your time, but I've got already a scrapbook of Milford's lost buildings. And already I've run out of pages in the back. I've got some loose pictures there. I got to buy some more pages for this thing. I don't want to keep adding to this. Come on, let's, and by the way, your plan of conservation and development, which by the way seems to be long on development and short on conservation, does provide for historic properties that are outside of historic districts. Please consider this for the future, that we've really got to do something before we lose all of our old buildings.
Hi, my name's Sean McKenna, M-C-K-E-N-N-A. I live at Caswell Cove, and I just want to say some of the numbers, the traffic numbers, I know Mr. Quish was questioning them, and I also do too, because there is quite a backup on the post road. Sometimes you're there 2 and 3 lights before it turns. Also, people getting off the highway trying to merge, that's also an issue. There was an article in the Mirror where Mr. Lynch said, I dare say that few people would turn left or right on Naugatuck Avenue. Well, I think it was Mr. Vargo who mentioned that I, for one, do turn left to get to work, and I think there's a significant amount of people who go that way, whether it be go to the Post Road that way or to go to New Haven. So I think that wasn't even mentioned when the expert was talking about traffic. Mr. Lynch also brought up the fact that they could build a larger building. Is that any reason to approve something? Is it because you can make something worse? I don't know. Plus, it's not to say, like the other woman had said, it's not to say it would be approved anyway, because if you have safety issues with this, you are going to probably have safety issues with a larger building. The traffic numbers that were thrown out to begin with were 21. Then it was heard it was 21 per hour, and then it went up to 143 for peak and 174 coming back. So there's a lot of issues here, safety issues. The sewers, which hadn't been mentioned, the other gentleman had mentioned that. That's a big problem. And I would hope that you would vote against it. There are a lot of reasons not to. I mean, I know it's less money to buy put a few houses, maybe get a variance and put 3, 4, 5 houses on there, but not 250 some odd residences. I would hope that you would not approve it. Thank you.
Hi, Tina Andrianovich, A-N-D-R-A-N as in Nicholas, O-B as in Victor, I-C-H. I live at 1564 New Haven Avenue, which is not really near where this development is, but you probably remember me from last year. It must be 2015, the moratorium must be over, and we're back. I must say, I'm impressed by the timing of this, but I also would say it's very premature. Thursday night in New Haven at 165 Church Street at 6:30 p.m., there will be an informational meeting with all of our representatives in Hartford who worked on this moratorium specifically for Milford to discuss the options with this beloved statute and what Milford can do. I expect to see all of you there. I expect to see all of you there. The Pond Point people will all be there. The Woodmont people will all be there. Okay, our emails have all gone out. I believe that we are trying to get under the wire with this. We're trying to get a little activity going, and I don't agree with it. I am a homeowner of a property that someone is trying to shoehorn 6 people into a one-family house next door. Same statute, same lovely stories, you know, I already heard the fairy tale, and this is just a bigger one. Okay, so I encourage you all to think about it, come and be educated on Thursday night in New Haven, see what our representatives have been doing since they put this moratorium in effect, and don't vote on this, table it, I don't care what you do with it, but figure out what Hartford's been doing before we sneak this one in under the wire, because that's all this statute is about. Let's see if we can get this stuff built before, without anybody looking. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Sarah Cornwall, spelled like Cornwall, Connecticut. I live at Caswell Cove, and I want to thank, you said to come up if we agreed with something said, and I just want to thank the gentleman over here whose company owns the property abutting the proposed development site for the safety issues he brought up, which certainly rang resonant in my mind. The development company referred to zoning from the 1960s that approved this area for significant development. That was 50 years ago. Are we really going to look at development and zoning from 50 years ago for this project? That's number one. My last concern is if you've ever tried to manage getting off 95 during rush hour, it is at the big exit, it is a very much of a safety issue, and I would love the town to put in a light there, but just to have it magnified by another 10 cars, 20 cars, you're really adding on, you're going to make a problem there, or a problem worse. So thank you very much.
I apologize for coming back up here again. I forgot to mention my name is Chet Shoyan again, that I was just in this room no more than 15, 20 minutes, and I got 17 signatures against this on a petition to vote against this proposal. The petition is out and it is floating around in the various different condominium associations, not only in our local area, but I'm assuming the people, especially the lady who was just up here from Woodmont, would probably want to sign the petition also. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Pam Illian, and I live at 14 Wiley. And I wasn't planning on speaking, but another lady from Wiley Avenue did. The water pressure is awful now. I can't imagine what's going to happen to it if this does get approved. Another thing that I have not heard said by anyone, and I don't know if there's any ramifications to this at all, but if the lesser of two evils is building another building, at what height will that be, and does that affect Sikorsky's flight plans? I don't know this, just a thought. Thank you very much for your time.
And could you just please spell your last name?
Illyn.
Good evening. My name is Akil Tanrıgüden. I just moved to United States almost 2 years ago. And I started living in 413 Pops Island Road, Caswell Cove. And before I start to say a couple of words, I am apologizing about my broken English. And I studied in England. I'm a mechanical metallurgical engineer. And most of my time, most of my profession comes from Shell Company and the Bridgestone tire companies. The gentleman earlier on, as an engineer, he mentioned some figures he gave about the traffic and some other things. He said 257 units, and he gave some figures regarding to that. He doesn't give any figures how this increases when these people, visitors, are coming to this property. 257. In Europe, but they are making this sort of developments, they always calculate around about 15 to 20% increase of the traffic, not because of the people living there, because of their visitors. especially at the rush hours. Somebody comes, picks up your children and everything. Besides all that, the type of building, 1-room flats, 2-room flats, dear member of the board, this company, Garden Homes Residential, he is just trying to fill his pocket. He is just trying to make money. He doesn't give any care about the environment. He doesn't give any care about his neighborhood. He doesn't give any care besides the money, besides to fill up his pocket. Please, in Europe, years ago, this sort of developments they made, but all in England, in France, in Germany. I spent more than 28 years in Europe. And this sort of developments, all demolition, they pulled over. Please, please take all these in consideration. Thank you.
You, sir. Sir,
My name?
could you just please spell your first and last name
My
for the
first
record?
name is A-K-I-L, my first name, Akil. Surname is Tanriguden, Tanriguden.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Tatiana Murphy. I'll spell my first name, Tatiana. I live at 538 Pope's Island Road, which is in Caswell Cove. And my issues are mainly the traffic. I never go to the post road. Well, I do, but I go a different way. I go through our nice neighborhoods. And I'm sure that once the people living there realize, oh, I don't have to go the post road through, as Mr. Quish said, down to Schoolhouse Road, I will go the back roads neighborhood. And I'm concerned about that, and I thank you very much. I forgot 500 Big Drive for his eloquent proposal and his concerns, which we share, and he brought up many other ones that we didn't share. So I ask you please to deny this on the grounds of public safety and the needs of the people of Milford. Thank you.
My name is Robert Healy, Healy. I am from Caswell Cove. I have a very simple question. Could you define for me, because I mean, I'm a novice on this. I guess it's a vocabulary issue. What is a special permit?
Staff, do you want to?
This is a public hearing. It's not a give and take. We can't answer questions.
What we'll do is we'll we'll find a way to answer your question before the hearing.
Okay.
I can answer it after the hearing. I can answer it.
Okay. The zone that is concerned, because we're talking about a concerned zone, would that be correct? The zone that we want to create a special permit for, okay? Am I understanding this correctly, or is this piece of land already incorporated with another zone? Basically, my question is, are we creating a spot zone?
Staff.
Again, the same response. It's not, in the public hearing setting, it's not for the people who are testifying to come up and ask the board to answer their questions. I'll be glad to meet with you afterwards and describe the application, and I'm sure the applicant would do that as well to answer those questions.
Therefore, if I were to ask you at the end of all this process, if there would be a referendum, you couldn't answer the question either.
I will tell you this, we have no provisions for referendums in the city of Milford.
Okay.
Betsy Ratner, R-A-T-N-E-R, 1423 Windward Road, Caswell Cove. I'm coming from an emotional point of view. My husband was an architect. When I say emotional, I go, woo, okay. he adored low-income housing because anyone that had to live on the street, anyone that couldn't afford to have a place to live, totally compassionate about. So believe me, heartfelt. I'm a widow, so just a minute. Okay. It's heartfelt to want to do this. It's just not the right place. When it comes to safety and it comes to people's lives, sure, we'd love to have everybody have a roof over their head, and it's nice to have affordable housing. This is definitely not the right spot. And I thank all of you, the poignancy and the points that were brought up. Woo, there's a lot of bullets there for you to consider. Thank you.
Anyone else that would like to speak against the application? Seeing no one, the applicant has a chance for rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm going to turn things over just in a minute to our fire safety consultant, Joe Versteeg, who's going to address the issue of the placement of the driveways. That has come up as a safety issue, and we're going to address that. But I want to wrap things up by bringing us back to where we were 2 weeks ago and talk about this application as I started in a proactive manner. I spoke at the outset about how this is an application that's filed under existing state law. I heard the comments about public hearings next week and efforts to change the law, but we're here before you tonight with an application that conforms in all respects with the existing state statutes. And part of what we've done here in the course of the last 2 public hearings is laid out for you a project that we feel is appropriate. It's appropriate for the site. It's appropriate for the location in Milford. It's appropriate because of the highway infrastructure that was created, as I've spoken about on numerous times over the last 2 public hearings. An infrastructure that was created in the 60s when the BIC plant at 500 BIC Drive employed 1,500 people on 3 shifts. And now, in 2015, we're coming in with a proposal to have a residential multifamily development with 257 apartments. We've placed into the record evidence through a traffic expert showing that the traffic generated from this particular application, this particular development, will not have an adverse impact on the area. Some of the neighbors that spoke said that in dispute of my point that traffic naturally wouldn't go to BIC Drive and Naugatuck Avenue. Well, it's sort of a catch-22 because if that's the case, then it goes to diminish Mr. Quish's concerns about traffic backup that may occur at the intersection of Route 1 and BIC Drive. But the bottom line is there is replete in our presentation to you the fact that this is an appropriate development. It meets the spirit and the standard of the Affordable Housing Act. We've shown that the market rent and the affordable rent for the individuals that would be residing there will not be far off. It's not a low-income project, as this last speaker came up before you and talked about. And we made very clear in our presentation to you that this is going to be an upscale development which will be an enhancement to Milford. We like to think that it's an appropriate site because of the fact that it's located in the office design district. We like to think that because of the traffic that will be generated, it will dissipate through Route 1, through Interstate 95, out through BIC Drive, and it will not be an infringement upon the folks in the area. There were comments about the sewage that would be generated. Your packet clearly has the approval that was obtained by our application to the Sewer Commission last spring. Attorney Whitney also handed out to you, again, her concerns about water pressure, and Mr. Cantafio's concerned about water pressure. But I would like to direct you to the second page of the handout that she gave you tonight. It's an August 7th letter from then Chief Healy, Chief Bill Healy, back in 1985. I'm going to read into the record the 3rd paragraph. This letter was directed to Mr. Contafio, again, in response to Mr. Contafio's concern about water pressure in the area. And the letter says, quote, "In regards to your present situation, the water flow on Caswell Street, Bick Drive, is very substantial, and there is a 20-inch main on the street. The problem of the pressure should be overcome by your pumping system. As they stated in their letter, it is the policy of this department on any sprinklered building, the first line is connected to the standpipe system, whether the power is on or off." So right in that letter back in 1985, it shows that there's adequate water supply in the area. The problem that would be generated by lack of full pressure or inadequate pressure to satisfy the residents in the building is addressed in the booster pump system that we submitted to you tonight. The other concerns that were raised, the other public hearing, the sidewalks, the traffic, I think we've adequately addressed those here tonight. And lastly, as it relates to the Iroquois pipeline, any work, that's not a zoning issue. Any work that needs to be done on this property within the easement area is going to be reviewed by Iroquois. Any work has to be done under strict guidelines that they have and strict oversight that they have. So we don't feel that that's an issue. So I'm going to turn things over to Joe to address the driveway, but these are the issues that were raised at the last public hearing. The gentleman asked that the public hearing be remained open for them to come in with a traffic expert of some sort. I asked that that not be the case. This is the second public hearing. It's been noticed adequately, not adequately, it's been noticed in conformance with our zoning regulations for applications for special permits. There was articles in the newspaper. Last two public hearings have been attended by persons in the area. So what I would ask that upon the completion of our rebuttal that this public hearing be closed.
Before we get into the fire safety issues, one item that I wanted to address relating to traffic is the location of the site driveway in relation to the Northeast Electronics driveway. Our driveway, in fact, is quite a bit further to the north, going away from Naugatuck Avenue than the driveway to Northeast Electronics. So we are not opposite them. We're actually much closer to the gas pipeline. As has been mentioned before, there's parking over the pipeline in that area, and then the access drive is just to the back end of where that parking is. So we're not that much distance from where the pipeline is. Thank you. Joe.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Joseph Versteeg, V as in Victor, E-R-S-T-E-E-G. I'm an independent fire safety code consultant from Torrington, Connecticut, 86 University Drive. I've been asked to speak to the issue of the single site access roadway. The document that is the regulatory, sets forth the regulatory requirements for fire department vehicle access to any building site newly constructed is the Connecticut Fire Safety Code and the Connecticut Fire Prevention Code, which is adopted pursuant to Section 29291 of the General Statutes. As you may know, this is a document that is set forth by the Codes and Standards Committee of the Department of Public Safety as well as the Commissioner of Building Services, and then goes before the Regulation Review Committee, the Attorney General for Legal Sufficiency, as well as the Legislative Committee on Public Safety. All throughout the process, public hearings are held. There has never been any input from the Fire Chiefs Association, any negative comment from the Fire Marshals Association, the Building Officials Association, the American Society of Safety Engineers, or any other public or safety group-orientated group, either at the national level or at the Connecticut level during any public hearing that would offset the single access road. The standard requires a single access point into the site. That's what has been provided. There is some informational wording in the document that talks about when you might want to consider a second one. And the second one, the information they provide, some of the guidance is based on railroad tracks. And not just a normal railroad track, but those railroad tracks that you find out west, where you find a train being pulled by 8 or 9 or 10 engines, and you just know that you're going to sit there for 45 minutes while this train goes across the flatlands of Nebraska. That's what they're talking about. Or causeways that are subject to overflowing and flooding and things of that nature. But a single access point is all that's required by the Connecticut Fire Prevention Code. Thank you.
Any further rebuttal from the applicant?
Thank you. One last point, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Platt came up and spoke about the house, and I just wanted to note for the record that during the course of review of this application, the Milford Fire Department asked my client to donate the house for training purposes for the Milford Fire Department, so that upon approval of this application, if you see fit, the Milford Fire Department is going to use the structure for training purposes, and it will be it'll be destroyed there. Right there. And my client wanted to add the caveat that if someone wants the building, we'd be happy to donate it to anyone who would want the building.
Thank you. So how this works, if you spoke before against the application and you would like to rebut the rebuttal, you have that limited opportunity. You had to speak before and you have to comment on something that was said during rebuttal. You could come to the podium.
If all our speech is going to the records, the first thing tomorrow morning, all my lawyers, they are in Baker & McKenzie Company in New York. The first thing tomorrow, I'm going to talk with them, and I will find out some way to issue this company, and I will find out some way to stop them.
Cities have the right to make codes more stringent, but they cannot reduce the state fire code. Milford has on site plans, the trucks have to have a turning radius. They do not want tower ladders backing out. It's a dangerous thing. I know this because I'm the retired senior fire inspector for the city of Milford. So if any of you have questions for me, please see me afterwards. I'll be more than happy to answer any of your questions regarding fire safety.
Thank you, sir. You don't have to, sir. You don't have to spell your name, but could you just please state it for the record?
Sure. Andrew Vargo, V-A-R-G-O.
Pam Illian, Wiley Street again. We've heard several references to when BIC came there, which was, I believe, 63, from Seymour, that there were 1,500 employees. That's not exactly accurate. I know that because I've lived in the area all my life, and I worked at BIC. When they had the highest employment, I believe it was 1,200, even if it wasn't, is there anybody here who worked at BIC and knows that people were bussed in from Seymour, which eliminated 100 to 200 cars of traffic? How many remember that? So when they say there was 1,500 people and that they were all employed and they all brought cars, there was carpooling and there were buses. Thank you.
Again, my name is Joseph Kochi, and I wanted to discuss one particular issue which the applicant raised in his rebuttal. We have discussed that the applicant proposes one driveway, one means of one access in and one access out. The concern is really, do fire trucks have sufficient radius to turn within the site? Has anyone analyzed that critical issue? This was the basis on which the town of Fairfield turned down an application by this same applicant for an 8-30G application. This must be analyzed carefully because it is the life safety of everyone who lives on that site. Thank you.
Is there anyone else that would like to rebut the rebuttal? Seeing no one, Mr. Lynch, you know you have the last rebuttal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Last point to the gentleman's discussion about the turning radius and Mr. Varga's discussion. The initial handout that we gave to you, page 38, has the review of the plans by Assistant Chief and Fire Marshal Robert Healy. The plans were reviewed completely by the fire department, turning radiuses, access to the property, and his memo speaks for itself. Full approval from the Milford Fire Department. Thank you.
Any questions from the board? I have a question for, is it Mr. Kochi? If you could please. What do you propose your report to cover?
We basically have not studied the applicant's plans in great detail. We would propose to spend time doing that with our consultants to show the traffic impacts of this development as well as the life safety impacts. The fires in New Jersey are a critical issue for all of you to consider. This is a big wake-up call for this type of construction, high density, sprinklered, code-compliant construction, and this building burned to the ground over the course of 24 hours in Edgewater, New Jersey. Same thing that we're faced with here. The critical thing for us is that my company owns the adjacent property, which is a significant employer in this district, in this region. We will not tolerate any interruption of our business, our tenants' business, from this type of a development.
And I don't know what the other members of the board think. I would prefer not to leave the record open for everything. So if you could articulate specific points you would like to address, maybe we could keep the record open simply for that.
Sure. Life safety, particularly the impact of the kind of construction that's proposed here, the water pressure on Bick Drive, the access for fire trucks to the site, and how a fire could be fought by the Milford Fire Department. In New Jersey, the Avalon development, 35 towns had to send fire trucks to fight the blaze. 500 firemen fought this blaze over the course of over 24 hours, and they couldn't put it out. We don't want to see the same thing here in Milford on Bick Drive. We can't. Okay, so that's what I would propose to analyze and present to the Planning and Zoning Board.
Thank you. Any, Mr. Panzella.
If there's going to be some type of evaluation that you're going to do, I'd like to see a traffic evaluation in there also.
Any further questions from the board? Ms. Servine?
Well, I have to admit ignorance. I don't know a lot about water pressure and ample water being available, but I don't see very much information here from the Regional Water Authority that really gives me any information about how many pumps are required for the number of residential units, why, compared to what I believe Ms. Whitney said. They have 2 pumps there at Northeast Electronics, or 3, I think, and 1 was specifically for fire, 2 were for the use of the building. And here, as I understand it, there are 2 pumps that are being installed with this complex. I would love to have someone give me more specific answers to my questions. What we received here from the Regional Water Authority is very vague, and for me, it just leaves me very open to a lot of questions. Maybe someone can clarify that for me right now.
Well, I'll try to, Gene. It's a building code issue, pure and simple. It's been raised as an issue under the guise of public health and safety during the course of the last 2 public hearings. But in terms of the pumps, the type of pumps, adequacy of the pumps, it's accordance with the building code. So in other words, once they determine, is there lack of pressure? Does the pressure need to be built up? It's all a function of the size of the building and how many pumps need to be installed. So we're not giving you any information, further information. It's laid out in the letter and the emails with the water company. The water company is merely saying that the water that's provided to the area through the main is adequate, but if it's not adequate for the particular building, then it's a building code issue. It's the pump or pumps necessary to create adequate water pressure would be based upon what their findings are once they start to build the building, and then install the pumps adequate to reach that PSI that's necessary.
Thank you. Any further questions from the board? Mr. Nickel?
Yeah, last meeting on the same regard, it was the same issue. It was water pressure, and I believe it was thought to have huge tanks on the roof to supply the pressure. At this point, I don't understand how you're going to be sucking pressure out of this 16-inch main that's in the road to service not only all these people that are taking showers and washing and et cetera, and also provide enough water for any type of a fire. So I can perfectly see having a couple 200,000-gallon tanks on your roof. It's flowing down. But now you're trying to suck this stuff out of the street to put out a fire. I don't understand that. Suppose there isn't enough water in the street to do that.
Again, Doug Hero from Garden Homes. In our contact with the water company, they assured us that there was enough water in the water main to supply our project. As the lawyer mentioned, it would be a building code issue as far as the pumps are concerned, and in that case, as far as if tanks were required at that point. Our data right now from the water companies tells us there is plenty of water in the water main to achieve our goal of building this building. Water pressure can be easily overcome with the pumps that we proposed on the domestic and on the fire protection. The water pressure can be overcome in the condos, in a residence, in any situation. This is not the only place in the state that has this low or substantially lower water pressure that buildings are built and fire systems are supplied with the proper water pressure. The pumps and or, if required, a storage tank would resolve all these issues, whether it's our building, a residence, a single-family home, or a condominium. The water pressure is not an issue that cannot be resolved very easily with these components designed into the engineering of the fire protection system.
So at this point, I can understand having 60 pounds of pressure under the street for my home and putting a reducer valve on there so it doesn't blow the pipes off or in the shower.
Correct.
But I don't understand the reverse of that. You're actually telling me that based on the code that you're going to come up with is to whether or not you need tanks on the roof to adequately put out a fire and service these residents. Otherwise, what I'm thinking is these pumps are actually sucking the water from the main in the street. Is that correct? They're sucking.
Yes, they would be drawing.
They're sucking the water out of the main from the street.
They would be supplied by the water that's in the main, and based on the water company's comments to us, that is adequate water for the requirements we need.
Thank you.
Ms. Servine.
So again, if I understand this correctly, there is a possibility that there might be storage tanks used.
At this point, that possibility does not exist. At this point, the water company tells us there's adequate water and no storage tanks are required. The booster pumps, as we mentioned earlier, are required. The storage tanks at this point are not required.
Right, but I think I'm hearing you say it might be possible that they may be required at some point in time. But then my question then is, if they are, it is decided to use storage tanks, I would imagine we would need an engineering review or a site plan review for us to look at that.
Unless the data changes dramatically, our water company, your water company, has told us and assured us that there's enough water in the system, no storage tanks required.
Thank you.
I have a question for staff. Mr. Sulkus, we need to close the record by April 30th, 2015. Is that correct?
No, you need to close the public hearing by 2/24/15. You need to wrap up everything. You need to make a decision on the public hearing by 4/30/15.
So we would need any additional reports in the record by the 24th, by the next meeting.
That's correct, unless the applicant wanted to give you an extension.
Mr. Lynch, would you like to give us an extension?
There's actually two issues here, because I heard the comments before about keeping the public hearing open, and then for what? For specific things? You can't leave a public hearing open and limit what's submitted. I mean, that's case law. So, again, I stand by the point that this is the second night. Our traffic report was dated September. Our application was filed. Everything was complete before January 1st. Anyone who was here tonight had the opportunity to review the file. This is the second public hearing. If the gentleman wanted to come with a traffic expert to dispute our traffic expert, he had the opportunity to do that. So after consultation with my client, no, we would not be agreeable to an extension of the keeping the public hearing open.
Thank you. So, Mr. Sulkus, we would need a report by the next hearing.
If you're leaving the record open, the hearing open to receive new information, whatever that, in whatever form that is, we would have to have it by the next meeting, because at the next meeting you have to close the public hearing.
Mr. Kochi, is that, you could come to the podium.
We can ask our consultants to hop on this and do this as quickly as possible by the 24th, if they can do it.
It would actually be by the 17th.
The next meeting's the 20th.
Is it the 20th or the 24th?
February 20th.
February 20th, okay.
Was that correct? Wait, let's just make sure we have the right date.
Please.
It's February 17th.
February 17th would be the next meeting and the last meeting to submit any additional materials.
And the reports would be due what date? Is it that date, by the 17th?
Yeah.
By the 17th.
Okay. I'll see what I can do.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to request that any report that's going to be submitted be delivered to me at least a week before that, so we have the opportunity to have our traffic expert review that.
Mr. Lynch, I think that's physically impossible for that to happen.
The next meeting is the 17th.
The next meeting is the 17th. Right. He has until the 17th to submit a report. If you'd like to voluntarily keep the record open so your people could review it and respond, we could do that.
We'll address it at that time. All right. Thank you.
The 17th. So any questions before we adjourn? Right. So we will keep the record open for the submittal of that report, and I guess technically the entire record. We will go to the next item on the agenda. The board will take a 2-minute break, so if people leaving could just please quickly leave so we can continue finishing the agenda. All right, we're back on the record, and the next item on the agenda is liaison report. Does anybody have a report? Mr. Mead? No meeting. So next week is the next meeting, police commissioner meeting? Second Tuesday, second Monday. The next item on the agenda is the regulation subcommittee. Mr. Grant?
We had a meeting this evening. There's a few items that will be presented next meeting for you to review. And then in the meeting after that, we'll take a vote on whether to pass them on or not. And we have another meeting scheduled for the 17th to go over the flood regulations.
No. The next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes. Any discussion, or would anyone like to make a motion? Mr. Quish? With a motion, Mr. Sutton with a second. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Anyone against? Motion passes. The next item on the agenda is the chair's report. I do not have anything, but Ms. Servine has a report.
Well, I don't have a report, but with your permission, Mr. Chair, I would just like to speak about my concern of what happened at our meeting last time regarding the Shell Avenue application. From my perspective, and I think the board's... Do you hear anything I said? Oh dear, okay. I wanted to talk a little bit about what happened at our meeting last time regarding the Shell Avenue application. From my perspective, and I think I can speak for the rest of the board, the reason why we did not approve that was because it was an incomplete site plan review. It's written very clearly in our regulations what's included in a site plan before it gets to our board, and certainly one of the major things is that all the agency reports are there for us to know, and so we can make a responsible decision. So that starts off my concern. I was very unhappy to see what transpired with both the applicant and the others concerned, but it gets to an underlying issue for me, and that is things have changed a lot in the past months or more, especially with the loss of our assistant city planner. And I think that we, as a board, have not been informed, or maybe not even included in some of the decisions about how her duties are going to be distributed, who's going to do it, and what our relationship as a board is to those new changes. I think I mentioned last week that I'm concerned about our board's authority and autonomy, and I would just like to hope that we can be a part of any procedural or any other changes that go forward with the staff that specifically impact us as a board and in our decision making. I think that we legally need to be included and that we should be included.
Thank you, and we have Mr. Griffith here and obviously Mr. Sulkus, and without getting into a heated discussion about it, how is that going to happen? Meaning, how is this board going to participate in whatever changes are going to be made and have input and I guess just have a general understanding of what exactly is happening so we don't get, I guess, caught off guard like we did in the last meeting?
Thank you. Joe Griffith, the Director of Permitting and Land Use. Yeah, since our meeting last, and I appreciate your concerns that you voiced at the last meeting as well as tonight's meeting. In response to that, again, it opened our eyes to a number of things. We're looking to refine the procedures
that are in place. That's not to say to go through and unravel every procedure that's in place right now, but we are looking at these various procedures. And when I say looking at the procedures, I don't want it to be confused, please, with looking at the regulations, looking at the statutes, looking at the codes. Those are pretty much sacrosanct. They have their own processes that they go through. We as from a procedural matter, can't touch those. But what we are doing is looking at the procedures. My specific process that I would like to, I'll call it a filter, what I would like to put every one of the procedures through is a review and refinement process in which we are then formalizing them, putting them in writing, making sure what's in writing has been reviewed, then reviewing them internally with all the staff, zoning enforcement officers, city planners, city attorneys, as well as if it relates to inland wetlands or relates to the administration of the building code, our chief building inspector. Go through, make revisions based on feedback from those parties and staff, and then specifically come through a review of the procedure specifically with this board or the affected board. Make sure that we clearly explain it to you what the basis of it is, and then again, look for your feedback. And then finally, make sure that these procedures, as they are documented and formalized, are properly implemented. Again, it would go beyond the internal memoranda that we send out to staff and go to specifically making sure that these procedures are effectively and efficiently incorporated into View Permit, our database system, and making sure that it works within the procedures set up through there. And then finally, making sure that these are published on our website, both through the forms and through descriptions of the procedures. So I guess what I'm saying is I'd like to make sure that as we address be it the CAM reviews, the site plan reviews, applications for variance, applications for inland wetlands approval, that all of those procedures are being reviewed through that process, through that filter. And again, it would mean right in the center of it coming before this board and making sure individually they are spelled out and clearly explained to you. And again, look for your feedback.
Thank you. So could we assume that what we consider the old procedures for CAM review are still in place until what
Correct.
you just listed gets flushed out?
Yes.
And you'll seek board's input and ultimately approval on those issues?
Yes, and please, let me reiterate the distinction between what your zoning regulations require versus the procedures.
Thank you. Ms. Servine?
I hear you're differentiating between procedure and regulations, but nonetheless, I would think that anything that directly impacts the board and our decision-making, that it would be very important for a representative of the board to be a part of the process of you creating these procedures. And I, for one, would think it'd be appropriate for the chair or some representative to be there as part of that brainstorming and the rest of the staff as well. So are there a number of people who is involved at this point in time on developing the procedures or changing them?
I guess again, much as David could probably woefully testify, much of the communication that we are developing in this matter is done through email. And again, I'd more than happy to keep Chairman Gettinger copied on any of the correspondence as it develops.
And what would be my, seeing that this isn't a board specific issue, being able to forward to the rest of the board to get input? Is that something I'd be able to do without?
Yeah, as I said, and again, I'd look for feedback and comment, but the process that I would anticipate putting any of these procedures through is, again, developing, refining, looking to see what procedures are in place right now. Perhaps they don't need any changes at all. But that, again, that would be reviewed with Mr. Sulkus, Mr. Harris, Ms. Palumbo, or Mr. Rauchi, and then take that, and if there are any refinements or if they get left in place as is, distribute them to Chairman Gettinger for distribution to the board.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry, one more question.
Keep going.
I'm not sure I'm hearing it clearly, but it sounds to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that you're creating these changes and then you're going to put this out through email to the different people that will be affected by it and get their input. I'm used to thinking of a decision-making process of a group of people sitting down and brainstorming together at the preliminary part of decision-making. That's just where I'm coming from, but are these directives or changes coming solely from you, and then you're asking for feedback from others through email? Did I hear that correctly?
No, not necessarily. Again, I'm looking for the feedback specifically through the city attorney's office.
Thank you.
Thank you.
But we just to kind of, this is not a hard and fast process that I'm trying to develop here. So again, if more interaction is desired with the board as a whole, or with the chairman, that's fine. I mean, I think we can develop a process here.
Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the staff report. Any report from staff?
None this evening.
Thank you. Any new business? Seeing none, would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn? Mr. Dolan, seconded by Mr. Sutton, approved by everybody. This meeting is adjourned. Thank you.